This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hope you had a great weekend, everybody. Welcome to, what is this? Episode number 11, week number 3 of Winnipeg Sports Talk and Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. It is a pleasure to have you with us live on our YouTube channel at Winnipeg Sports Talk, and for everybody joining us a little later on this afternoon on their favorite podcast feed. We got a great show today and really a great week coming up. Zig Fracassi, our old pal Zig from Sirius XM, NFL, and NHL Radio is going to join us about 1:45. We'll talk a little bit about the winners and losers of NFL free agency, get Zig's take on this very unique NHL season, and to kick off a bit of a 1290 reunion week here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, we're going to have the big rig himself, Jim Toth, pull in about 10-15 minutes or so. Really looking forward to having Jim on the program, and cannot wait to do this again all week long with some of our other pals from the old station on Pembina Highway. We've got Rick Ralph joining us tomorrow, Kevin O on Wednesday, Brandon Rowicki coming up on Thursday night, and on Friday we finish it off with Troy Westwood. Certainly, we're going to get Munzie and Bombing and Paulie Edmonds on at some point as well, but really going hard with some of the daily voices you heard on 1290 back in the day, and now they're going to be with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Let's welcome in Michael Remis to the program to get things going. Remo, how was the weekend?
Great weekend, great weather. Went to the park with my son. It was busy. It's draft season, baseball draft, so I had 2 of them yesterday. One in the afternoon and one in the evening into the late evening. Yeah,
long draft day.
I spent about 7 total hours in front of a computer picking players. My brain was totally fried by the end.
Hey, who's the hot player that is rising up everyone's draft boards? Who's the guy that is most likely to be reached for right now if you're going into a draft?
I honestly, the research, and because I've been so busy with this, the research for me has been not what it usually is. I know, the hot names, Acuna and Tatis passing, Mike Trout, who's been the perennial number 1 pick. That was big. But I did have a bit of a snafu before where I forgot to invite one of the owners to the league, and the draft room had already opened, and
what a disaster!
And he couldn't join the draft because it had already started. So thankfully, I was able to reset it. I almost called the old owner, be like, "Hey, give me your password so this guy can get in," and thankfully, I didn't have to come to that.
A lot of comments in the YouTube chat on your new cut. Some fresh maintenance for the salad, I see, Reem.
You know what, we're on, first of all, if you're watching on YouTube, a couple things to point out. First of all, I got a haircut. I'm usually wearing a hat. I got a haircut this morning. I was like, you know what, I'm not going to put a hat on right after. I don't think that's the right thing to do, so I'm showing it off here. I know everyone talking about Jim Toth's hair, so we'll see what he's bringing. But US, I can actually see your face today. You're not in the bottom right corner.
Okay, listen, let's just get right to that. I've got an NHL book of trivia, and
Nice.
I've got another book called, I believe, The Game, an IKEA catalog that has never been opened, and it's all helping out right now. Now, my mom was giving me some serious brain damage on that, because I had the mic down a little bit lower and over on the side so I could see my screen better. Anyways, I was hearing about it from all sides, so I took your advice. We've jacked the mic up a little bit. Bottom line is, most importantly, it sounds okay, which I think it does. But yes, I am. I'm a little more centered right now for our YouTube viewers in the stream.
Yeah, well, look, we're YouTubers. You got to get used to, being on screen. You can't be down in the corner. And I'm glad your mom. I want to give a big shout out to your mom for telling you, because I almost texted you, "Hey, man," but I just said, "Hey, put some books underneath there." I'm shocked you even had books to put on. I was like, "Does Hustler own books?"
You know what? And the funny thing is I'm not really too sure where this book came from or who. Actually, I think my pal Greg Pasechnik gave this to me when I was in the hospital. Don't know if I cracked it then, but anyways, it's coming in handy right now as we get going on another week of Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you're with us right now, great to have everyone that's live in the YouTube chat. Lots of people rolling in as we get started for another week. As always, if you can, hit that thumbs up button. The like button certainly helps us out a lot. And if you're listening to the podcast a little later on, do your boys a favor and pop down at the bottom of the feed and give us a 5-star rating and maybe put in a nice little review for us. That's another thing that certainly can help us out. And hey, Remo, just before we get into the Jets and tonight's game, what happened on the weekend, we have graduated in the YouTube world. We literally are YouTubers right now, which I did see a poll of kids in today's society. Number one thing they want to be the most when they grow up is a YouTuber. So we essentially are the pinnacle of coolness for kids these days, making it happen on the World Wide Web.
I never thought I would be officially a YouTuber, but people make careers out of it. It's what kids want to be. They didn't have YouTube when I was a kid, so this is pretty cool now. But yeah, we've kind of graduated. I added in, people are asking how they can support the stream, or they want, people have asked if we had a Patreon. We don't have any of that, but there is an icon at the bottom. If you want to have like a super chat or some kind of sticker, for a fee, you can do that, and it'll support the channel, but also make your chat more visible to the others. So I've never done it. I don't know what it is, but it's worth trying, I guess.
Yeah, we'll check it out. Gregory is into the chat. Wow, Hustler's mom is in the chat. Where's she at? Greg, easy, buddy. Greg's the best. Always there. Greg probably has some hot takes on the wrestling on the weekend. We're just, 3 weeks away from WrestleMania? At some point, we'll certainly hit that. But let's get right to it before we bring Jim in. It's finally happened, Reem. The Jets have lost 2 in a row. This was, to be honest, another Connor McDavid show where, I thought the Jets, defensively did a pretty good job overall. Pretty hard not to look at these last 2 games and really the last 5 games and say that there's some issues right now with the top line being able to keep the puck out of their own net. I'm just looking at these numbers. Last 5 games, Mark Scheifele's -9, Wheeler's -9, and Paul Stastny is -7 for a grand total of -25. Now, I realize the plus-minus stat is something that you don't spend too much time on for obvious reasons, but in a big picture over a couple weeks, it does tell you that line in particular had a real tough time, as everyone does, keeping Connor McDavid in check. But it's even more painful when that's happening and you're not getting the production in the other end. And really, it's been the Jets' quote-unquote number 2 line that's been doing most of the heavy lifting when it comes to lighting the red light behind opposition goalies lately.
Yeah, Nikolai Ehlers was one of the stars of the week last week. And, he's just had an amazing season. You see the speed, you see the hands. He's shooting a lot more. Banked one in off Andrews Kopp's leg. And I want to give a credit to Ehlers because, on Power Play 2, I have been saying for years, why doesn't he just try the off wing? What's going on? But he looked unreal on Saturday on his left side, skating around, creating room, and walking in and shooting. So that second line has been, second line with Ehlers, Dubois, and Connor looked very, very strong. The Scheifele, Stastny, Wheeler line having a real tough go, keeping the puck out of the net. But, we had been on the Jets when they were winning. Why are they giving up too many shots? This isn't sustainable. We're getting on them. Well, the games against Montreal, I thought, shot differentials were very good. Edmonton, again, two very, very close games. So on one hand, 2 games against Edmonton, very, very close. McDavid makes a couple plays, and you lose. I think you do have to be concerned yet another third period blown lead. You're going in up 2 goals into the third. You got to lock it down. It happened earlier the week against Montreal where, they ended up winning in overtime, so it didn't kill you. But that's not good. And yeah, the first line, not ideal. And look, losing 2 in a row for the first time of the year. Every team's going to go through a period where they lose 2 in a row. I'm not so overly concerned, but there are some signs that are definitely troubling. And you said to me off air, I'm not concerned, but if you lose again to Vancouver, then okay. It's pretty clear something's not right with this team.
Well, a couple things on that. First of all, I certainly expect that top line to have a big game tonight. Scheifele's had a couple big nights already against Vancouver this season. And you saw from the frustration of Wheeler at the end of the game, the smash stick, tossing the puck in. Apparently, you got a game misconduct for that at the end of the game, for tossing the puck into an empty building. No idea why that would be the case, but whatever. I think that they'll bounce back. And we're going to have Murat Atesh on to kick off the show tomorrow at about 1:15. I was just texting with Murat saying, well, hopefully we won't be talking about it for the first 3-game losing skid of the year. And I think this game is so important. A very, very big week with 4 games, Vancouver, and Calgary. And, hey, McDavid did a lot of damage, even when he didn't have the puck. I mean, I think about the Nurse goal on Saturday night, Reem, and I get it. I mean, he demands so much attention from everybody on the ice that, on that second goal, there were literally 4 Winnipeg Jets that had skated over, were doing everything they could to neutralize McDavid, and it gave Darnell Nurse an absolutely wide open lane into the slot to blast one past Connor Hellebuyck. And my God, that winning goal, Hellebuyck was so close to making what would have been one of the saves of the year on it, but that's a 50-goal scorer in Leon Draisaitl getting fed by a guy that you got to be pretty worried about as well. So, credit to the Oilers for making the most of their opportunities. The Jets, for their part, missed a couple glorious ones. Kyle Connor getting robbed by Mike Smith. And, man, how would things have been different if Dylan DeMello was able to jam that one in the final second of the first period? That was tough.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. I mean, it was such a tight game. You get a bounce. I thought, first of all, Mike Smith, I didn't know that he was, had that type of game in him. He was incredible.
39th birthday today.
Yeah, good for him. I mean, the Kyle Connor say maybe you wish Connor could have got some more wood. It was a bit of a bouncing puck, so, I mean, understandable. Mike Smith recovered, as he's done so many times when playing the puck. I mean, that's not his first rodeo, scrambling back to the net. And then, yeah, the DeMello one, you're thinking, is anyone other than, your defensive defenseman who's in front of the net trying to bang it in. So, if they score one of those, maybe it's a different game. So, I mean, I think part of you is think, okay, there's some issues here, but at the same time, you look at the game, it was a very close game, and the difference in both games has been Connor McDavid being, I mean, he makes plays, and I thought he was really good before. Like, he was really good when his rookie season. He's been really good, but he seems, if it's possible, even better now. And watching him, skate, stick handle with his head up, shoot the puck at the net while looking at the guy who he's faking the pass to. He's got some moves that are crazy. And again, the pass to Draisaitl, that's a one-timer from pretty far out. Impressive goal. And his other goal where he skated around the whole offensive zone a couple times. So those guys are good. They got to find a way to hold them in check. I know on that what was the 2-on-0, 2-on-1 goal. The Jets are trying to pinch to try to break it up, and then, they're getting beat. So, I mean, it happened a couple times there where they got beat, and, they'll regroup, try to figure out a way to stop him. But, man, that guy is good. I mean, you just got to throw your hands up, be like, oh, man.
You can give up 40 shots to a regular team, or you can give up 25 to the Oilers and have 20% of it be Connor McDavid, and you're probably better off being giving up 40 shots to a regular team, as we've seen so far, the Winnipeg Jets. The team moves on to Vancouver tonight. A big game. We'll talk about that coming up with Jim Toth in just a couple minutes, and also looking forward to getting Zig Fracassi's thoughts on the NHL season, as well as the big winners and losers so far of NFL free agency. I'm going to give a shout out to Jeff Telfer, who pops into the chat. First time I've been able to watch live on vacation this week. Listen to the podcast every day. Love the show. So glad to have you guys back. Jeff, it is a pleasure to have you with us. Great to have you popping in on the YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and throw us a like. And speaking of having guys back, as I mentioned right off the top of the show, if you just missed, we're going to have a real fun week this week with all of the boys, or many of the boys that you listen to daily on TSN 1290, jumping on with us. Jim Toth today, Rick Ralph tomorrow, Kevin O, Brandon Rewicki, and Troy Westwood all before the end of the week. Got to give a shout out to our sponsors, Not AutoCorp at Waverly and McGillivray, the Nick and Nikki DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Winnipeg, and of course Royal Sports. I popped into Royal on the weekend. It's so gorgeous outside. The place is booming. It's time to get ready to get back outside and reclaim our lives, people. And Royal Sports is the place to do that. Whether you're talking about camping gear, wake surf, skateboarding, the bike shop open right now with some incredible two-wheel options for you. All the top brands of activewear and their new fitness department. It's all there for you at Royal Sports at 750 Pembina Highway and 650 Raleigh and EK. Greg and Gerald, been with us for a long time. Great to have them on board. And as I mentioned, the Nick and Nikki DQ group, DQ Northgate, Dairy Queen Polo Park, Dairy Queen Niverville, and St. Anne's, which, usually would not be open yet. Now it is. They're firing it out. And you can get burgers there, too. I always thought there was just an ice cream one. I'm working on some new favorite DQ Blizzard flavors as well. Mm-hmm. I'll have some ratings for you a little bit later on. So, Jim Toth coming up in just a few minutes. Zig Fracassi at 1:45 today. And tomorrow, as I mentioned, Murata Tesh is going to join us. And we'll break down tonight's game over the Winnipeg Jets and look ahead to the rest of the week for the club as they spend a lot of time out on the West Coast. Well, speaking of the West Coast, I tweeted this out on the weekend. I don't know about you. It's just like, when's the next game? Who are the Jets playing? Even the road and home games don't mean a lot to most fans right now because no one's able to go to the games and everything around them. But it was pretty wild to look at the Jets schedule beginning on Saturday in Edmonton and realize that we have a steady 2 weeks of 9 and 9:30 games coming up. And listen, I'm not sure why some of these games out, like in Calgary, for instance, will be starting at 8 o'clock. I'm sure television has something to do with it. But for some people, that's an issue. I'll still be able to get up and watch the game, I guess. It won't be a big deal. But the one thing that really stinks in the COVID environment that we're at right now is that the bars, even if you're going with someone in your household or, I'll often just pop into, one of my favorite spots and sit up at the Wood, you got to get out at 10 o'clock. So with these 9 and 9:30 starts, even if you go to start the game, you got to leave beforehand. So that's somewhat unfortunate, but I guess the 31st of March is the next date that we will have a 6:30 start. I believe the Jets are playing the Toronto Maple Leafs then. But right now, a lot of time out in the West, beginning tonight with the Jets against the Vancouver Canucks. I'm looking forward to getting Jim Toth on with us in just a few minutes. We should also take a quick look at the brackets. How many of you all joined us in our bracket challenge? We'll have some great prizes. I am certainly not even close. I think I'm better than 9% of brackets. I do have Loyola Marymount. Sister Jean, I'm not betting against Sister Jean. You got a higher power in your corner. I'll bet you to go to the Final Four. They had a couple big upsets, but it has just been a bloodbath so far of teams that, were highly ranked. We saw Oral Roberts take out Ohio State. They were a 2 seed. And then it was Loyola bouncing the number 1 ranked Illini of Illinois yesterday. So like most of you, I have no clue going into this event who was good, what they've been doing, but it's always fun to get a ticket. And there has been a few wagers placed on CoolBet as well. Shout out to Ohio for that big win. That was one of my only ones coming up over the last little bit. Now, apparently we're having a little bit of a issue with getting Jim on. So we'll look forward to having Jim on in just a few minutes. But while we do it, we'll get to some of these comments. And here's a great one. This is the best Winnipeg sports show ever, but got me craving DQ every day now. Had a nice score blizzard last night. Let's go. Thanks, LB. Not sure whether that's Laurent Brossois or not, but Winnipeg Jets forever. I wonder if Toth did his hair for this. Well, we're going to find out in just a couple minutes. And then split. Yeah, this DQ talk is tough to hear. Jeff Cabillas, the Big Ten is a big disappointment. That goes without saying. There's been a lot of disappointments so far in the tournament. But let's get to it. Look who's here kicking off our 1290 reunion week. I think we have him live, locked in, and ready to go. The big rig himself, Jim Toth, who, to the disappointment of many watching in the YouTube live, is wearing a hat. Toth, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Well, like Remis, I got a haircut about a week ago, so but I did wear the hat. He's right. You don't wear a hat right after a haircut. You got to let the follicles fro, and let them go. So I'm good, man. How are you?
No complaints, buddy. Been, the last little while for me leading into early February, and then for all of us in early February has been a little, been up and down. But you know what? We put a lot of work into this. We've had some great reactions so far, and needless to say, I'm really looking forward to this week to have many of the old boys from the station on. It's a great way to kick it off with you. First off, how you been? What have you been up to? And how much are you enjoying not having to get up at 4:30 in the morning?
Well, that I'm enjoying a lot. Although it's funny because all the veterans we know in the business in this city, the Joellos, the Bo at our station, even Ace Burpee were telling me, it takes about 2.5 years to adjust to that schedule, because I predominantly been covering sports at night my whole career, day and night. So I never really totally adjusted to that, but after about 2 years, I got into a groove with it. And now I can't sleep in like I try to, but I'm like my grandfather, who was a farmer his whole life, and then he'd be retired in his 70s, and I'm like, why are you still getting up at 5:30 in the morning? And it was just like habit. But I'm good. I mean, I'm into the madness, of course, and as you can tell by my hat, I've been solving some mysteries, or at least trying to, and just hanging out, watching the Jets and paying attention to them and everything else that's going on in the sports world. But everything's good. It's been a nice little downtime, and you hear when this happens in the business, to take advantage of it. So you just do some things that you're not accustomed to.
Well, the ultimate irony of this whole thing is that you were a guy that, were no stranger to long stretches in the rack before you began doing morning radio every day on 1290. And now it's all over. You don't have to get up early. And yet, in maybe the biggest upset of all 2020, you became a father and now have basically a baby to deal with. So I imagine you're not getting those nice, comfy sleep-ins till 10:30 anymore, even though you don't have to show up on Pembina Highway.
No, I'm not. Actually, during the pandemic, it was kind of, it was first tough the first 3 days, and Brandon will probably tell you this later in the week, when you have to leave for the first time. So you're off for 2.5 weeks when my son was born, and then you sort of go in and you're like, man, it's tough sort of walking away. But then you sort of get used to that. You're 4 or 5 hours away from home, and especially in a pandemic, it's a nice little reprieve. But he's amazing. As you know, I think nobody's more surprised than I was.
It was plus 500. It was plus 5,000 at the beginning of the year. And listen, I wish I wagered on it, but I'm so happy for you. And you and Alexis and everything. It's a big game changer. And you know what? I think it puts a lot of things into perspective right now.
Yeah.
And I can say the same thing for what happened to me, earlier, at the end of 2020. You start to really appreciate, your health, your loved ones, in the middle of everything that we're going on right now. And, there'll be all sorts of challenges in life, but, the gift that you have been given is the greatest one. So it does put some things into perspective, I think.
It is a total perspective. It is. And it's interesting and it's fascinating. And I got to say, I've been enjoying every minute of it. And like you said, I mean, it's been such a bizarre year with the pandemic and then the sports. But then your injury, I mean, that shook a lot of us that are close to you, and you handled it like a champ. And then even this, the day 1290 literally closed, I think we all discussed, you'll probably talk about it with some of the guys this week, that we were just more shocked they closed the doors than anything. I think most of us are under the impression in this industry, anything can change at any minute for you personally, that somebody wants to go a different direction, or you just want to cut budget, whatever. But when they close the doors, that's when we all talk, sort of amongst ourselves. It's like that was mostly the shock. So that's added to a bizarre year. And then, it's a pandemic and everything that's going on there. But that's what I tweeted that day. I've only been through this once before with cutbacks. And when it happened, I'm just like, well, I'm not going to say anything for a couple of weeks. But there was such an outpour from everybody that day that at 4:00, I just said, I looked at my son, and I just looked at the pandemic and the world we were living in. And I just said, that's perspective for you. There are literally worse things in the world right now. And something better will come along down the line for all of us. I believe that. So he's been a help during the pandemic and having some sports. And then even this project you're doing, it's an outstanding, Huss. And I know you're having a blast with it. And I think it's a much needed thing in our community. So we literally, one door closes, another one opens, and several others will and have. And so there's a lot of perspective going in and around the world. And maybe I wonder if it would be different if we weren't in a pandemic, or you and I both didn't go through the massive changes we did this year.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Now, Mike K in the YouTube chat, Jim, the arborist there, nice tree bands on the elms. It's a
Thank
great,
you. Yes.
great shot of the
We
background.
have a worm problem here. By the way, I'm looking right at my Aquatech hot tub. A lot of people have been asking me about that. Yes, it's here and it's dynamic. And by the way, 1065 Dougal Dunlash Modier. Get your own staycation, no better time. By the way, and Aquatech's, it's right out there. So I've been spending some time in the Aquatech hot tub as well. aqua-tech.ca, if I may, us.
That is one of the great slid-in plugs of all time in Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily history. Next time you're on, I think we may have to get you live in the tub. May have to work on some technical issues.
I'm still trying to get in shape for that, but that'll be my goal for my next appearance on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Jim, let's get to it. For the first time all year, we're talking about the Jets losing 2 games in a row in regulation. Just thoughts on those 2 games in Edmonton. I think there was a lot of things they did well, but man, Connor McDavid just proving that he is a problem for which, if you are an opponent, there just simply is no answer.
Yeah, and you know what's strange about the 2 losses in a row to me is at the end of the day, could have they played better? Yes, but I thought they played 2 of their better games this year. Like, it just was Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. 2 goals the first game, and then the goal against, Scheifele takes a lot of heat, and mostly rightfully so for some of his defensive play, but he was right with McDavid. That's just McDavid. He followed him around the net, and he picks up the loose puck. He was on one knee when he scored, so I thought that's going to happen. My overall impression was, 2 losses in a row, you got to stop that. The top line, I believe tonight, I honestly do, is going to see some changes. I know you and Remis were talking about the plus minus, and that stat is what it is. But it's been about 5 games now where they've struggled mightily, and they were a combined -9 on that game on Saturday. Stastny, Wheeler, and Scheifele. Now one was an empty net goal. But so that's what I take from it. Like, it's going to happen. And a lot of people are going, the Jets are going to struggle just like Montreal has, just like Toronto has recently. It's going to happen to every team. Is this it? And I think this is where you want to stop it. I thought they played pretty well against Edmonton in both games. I like their defensive game against Toronto in that 3rd game of that series. And then going against Montreal, it wasn't as good, but I thought they got back to some very good defensive play as a team against the Oilers. But I think that's what Paul Maurice does. When the fans usually scream for a change or why is this guy on a line, immediately after one bad game, Paul Maurice doesn't do anything. But you show him a 5 or 6 game stint where things don't go well, and I wouldn't be surprised. He's not going to touch that number 2 line, I don't think so. I'm looking to see if Andrew Kopp's going to be moved up today on that top line just to get some defensive awareness there, and maybe Stastny can score a little bit more on a 3rd line. But I wonder if tonight's the night to get changes, and if not, and it doesn't go well, then I think they're going to break up that number 1 line by Wednesday.
Yeah, that certainly that'll be something we'll look at, in the skate. Well, probably they won't even do a skate. Those are kind of going the way of the dodo bird right now with the schedule that the team's at right now. But the way things look early on, and if Maurice does change things, the question, and I think you make a great point. While this is happening, and there's a bright light being shone on the Scheifele, Wheeler, Stastny line, because of just how lopsided the matchup has been with the top line on other clubs. Part of that, though, opens up Dubois and Connor and Ehlers to do what they've been doing, and you wonder, do they have those same sort of success if the matchups are different? Other side of things is this is a big, long road trip, and they're going to have to really handle the matchups that the other coaches have first before they go and change on the fly to try to get what Maurice wants to would like to see his lines matched up against.
Yeah, and that's a great point, too. And I think Nick Ehlers is just having a sensational year. I like what Dubois brought to the team, but I think it's what happens when you bring a really good player in. And it's reminded on me during his time here, too, he's still young. Like, there's still some growth there. When you look at his game, it reminds me of Mark Scheifele, maybe his 3rd or 4th year in the league, where, I think he came close that first time to hitting 30 goals, but there was still some – and there's some chemistry that they need to find. Kyle Connor, I tweeted out on Saturday, with the posts and the save by Mike Smith and the posts he's hit this year, he could be tied with Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid. He's got 15 goals. He could very easily have another 5 or 6 and be right up there to lead the league. And then we looked at that 3rd line, and, Lowry had a great start to the year points-wise, and Kopp did as well. And I think Appleton, and I know you've discussed this on your show all week and have been prior to this, is he's having a sensational season. And it became more obvious than ever why Jack Roslovic became, expandable with the emergence of Appleton. And then the fourth line, like, I don't think enough people are talking about this fourth line. I looked at Jansen Harkins and Christian Vesalainen in their 20 games. They had 1 point between them. I know, they're going to get hounded on, but Trevor Lewis has been a really good addition to this team with the Stanley Cup experience and how they played. Matthew Perreault, and everybody's going to say contract here, but he's healthy and he's playing extremely well.
He's playing his ass off right now, Jim, and he's making such a difference on that line. And I know where you're going next. I mean, Nate Thompson, that was the big hot button issue. How can you have some of these young guys not in and Nate Thompson being put in? I, for one, was somewhat skeptical. I'm a big fan of Jansen Harkins and what he did last year. And but honestly, and the reason why everything has been so quiet is that line absolutely has been pulling their weight lately. And I mean, if you're looking at, what's going on with the Winnipeg Jets, we're not talking about anything with the fourth line. We're talking about a top line that just simply hasn't had the puck go in the net for them, and unfortunately have had far too many disappointing skates back to the bench after one getting past Connor Hellebuck when they've been on the ice.
Yeah, the future is Harkins, and the future is Vesalainen, and I get that. But I said this at the start of the year, in a 56-game schedule, it's go time out of the gate. And you're going to go with vets experience, Harkins, Vesalainen, combined 20 games. Injury came in for Harkins. I get that. It's not like they're not part of this team or we're not going to see them again this year. But you need to get points in any single game you can in this shortened season. So I think if your worst problem going into game 3 of this road trip is, trying to get your first line going better, that's a great problem. I think you've been pretty well overall happy with the other 3 lines and what they've been doing. Plug and place another guy here and there. But I wonder if they'll keep the top line together tonight. And if they do, if they respond, and if they don't, what it's going to look like. But that's depth, eh? Like, that's why I think when we're probably going to talk some trade deadline coming up, Huss, that's why you sort of can trade that first round pick this year, because they've got 3 defensemen waiting that are 2 of them everybody feels are NHL ready for sure. They've got Cole Perfetti in there. They got Dubois here down the middle. They don't need to draft a centerman. And we all know the wingers they have, and Harkins and Appleton developing and everything else. This is a team that if they want to acquire pieces to go with what is already a deep roster, they can trade that first round pick this year. I've never found a season where they've been more able to get rid of that first round pick and not see long-term damage from it.
Well, I'm with you. I think it has to be worth it. A package including a first-round pick for Mattias Ekholm, I am all in on that, and ASAP, to be honest, to get him here. And I think David Savard would be a nice add, but he's got an expiring contract. The thing with Ekholm that's so attractive, not only is his pedigree as an elite defenseman, a guy that would come in and immediately make the Jets better on the back end and could eat a ton of minutes playing against top competition, but Jim, he's got 1 more year at less than $4 million. And with what you just said, the emergence of Logan Stanley, Sandberg, and Ville Heinola coming into the mix, I mean, Ekholm for this year and next season, as those young players get more accustomed to playing a bigger role as NHLers over the next 18 months, I think is a dream situation for the Winnipeg Jets, both cap-wise as well as putting those young players in a position to succeed when they do become regulars in the NHL.
And, we all sit here and we sort of forecast and go, hey, I would trade Niku in a first rounder like that. And apparently they want more than that. And then that's the question. Do you believe in this group? And I think you do, Huss. The other reason I trade that first round pick and make a move is what I've been saying all year. I know a lot of Jets fans have run out of patience. It's the 10th year here. But you've built to this. You've got some guys come, some guys go, some high-end pieces like Patrick Laine and stuff. You have a 2 to 3 year window here when you look at the remainder of that Scheifele contract, Ehlers, Connor Hellebuck. You have a 3-year window, including this year, to go after something. I think you do it. And a lot of people are going to counter with this and go, well, the expansion draft and Dylan DeMello. If you bring Ekholm in, you can't lose DeMello in the expansion. And basically, you have Ekholm here for that second year. You miss out on that 3rd year of a brand new DeMello contract. And I get it. I like Dylan DeMello. I think he's a good piece here. But if you can upgrade and your biggest problem is worrying about your depth that you're going to lose in an expansion draft and give yourself a chance to win this year and next year, I think you have to do it. And I think the philosophy of the Jets is different this year. I think that's why you saw the Dubois trade. I think if Dubois is not available and this team isn't where they're at, and in this 2 to 3 year window with the core contracts of guys like Scheifele and Ehlers, I think they sort of, it's 2 years ago. Well, if there's a right deal, we'll make it. But that's not the time anymore. it is go time. Your core veterans are in that 27, 28 to 32, 33-year range. You have young guys who now have 2 to 3 years experience, maybe 2 years in Appleton, and you have your Connors and Ehlers, you have your Connor Hellebuck. It's go time. I think it's what you've seen in the past from the Jets. You're going to see a more aggressive like you did to Dubois. I think they're going to aggressively go after guys like Ekholm, and I think they're going to look at this as a 2 to 3 year Stanley Cup window. We've got a chance to win the Cup in the next 2 to 3 years. We've got to do everything we can when opportunities present itself to do it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't pull the trigger on a major deal in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's certainly going to give us a lot to talk about every day here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. And you mentioned DeMello, and listen, he and Morrissey are going up against some tough competition now that they're paired again together. The results have been, at times okay, sometimes a little bit disappointing. And I think everyone in the organization loves Dylan DeMello. I think most of the fans, are pretty, happy with him. But, we talk about that number, what he's going to be making on the blue line going forward. I mean, if that was the player the Winnipeg Jets lost to Seattle with those other young players graduating from the Moose, I don't think that would be like the worst case scenario for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah,
and all of that.
And that's what you have to do in order to go for it. You're not going to lose somebody you're not going to miss. And you worry about that in the summer, and then you deal with it then in the summer. And if you've got 4.5 coming in with that home for another year and 3.5 going out, you still got 2 from that DeMello stuff left to go do some work. I like Dylan DeMello. I hope he's around. I'm not even sure he'd be taken in the expansion draft. He might be a guy that you leave unprotected, and there might be 6 to 8 better defensemen or equal defensemen. His contract will be real attractive, but the point is right now is you just do it, and you worry about the expansion draft in the summer. And if you lose an Appleton, if you lose a DeMello, you do it. I mean, you give yourself a chance to win now. And as much as I like Dylan DeMello, if it was him that you lost in the expansion draft, it's replaceable somehow, and you've still loaded up to bear, and you got Ekholm. So I think this is, I really believe more so than ever in a year that there's going to be a deal done to add to this roster. And I think this is a 2 to 3 year, do whatever it takes to try and win window for the Jets.
The big rig himself, Jim Toth, is with us live on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily on YouTube and in your podcast feed a little bit later on. Thanks to everyone that are listening to us on the ride home. And if you're with us live on YouTube, throw a comment in there, hit that like button. Jim, this week, coming off those 2 Edmonton games, and kind of talked about that, there were some good things the Winnipeg Jets did. Unfortunately, Connor McDavid showed why he's the best player in the world, and he made the Jets pay in spades 2 consecutive games. They now go into Vancouver, taking on the Canucks, a team that they've had incredible success against over the course of the last few years, and I believe now won 6 straight in Vancouver. How important do you think it is to get a win tonight to prevent a 3-game losing skid going into another game against the Canucks before the first look at the Flames with Uncle Daryl back behind the bench?
Excuse me. I'm a fan of the Sutters, so I'm all for that move. Surprising as it was. Hey, you know why they need to get a win tonight, Huss, is you saw the misconduct, the stick slap from Wheeler. What frustrates hockey teams and what frustrates hockey players isn't when they don't play good. They know when they don't play good. And when they don't play well and they sneak out a point, or they don't play well and they lose 7-1 to Montreal, what do they say? No big deal. We can tell we didn't play well. They need to stop that losing streak tonight because you saw the frustration. They're playing pretty well and they're not getting it done. And I think that's what you want to prevent from creeping in, is more of that puck into the stands and the slamming of the stick and the frustration of playing relatively pretty good than what you've seen from some other games and not getting a result. When that starts getting into 3-4 games of you playing good hockey and you're not getting anything, that's when you start squeezing the stick. That's when you try to do a little bit more. Maybe you cheat the game a little bit. So I think it's real important they bounce back tonight. And Vancouver's always played them tough. Brandon Wick used to point this out all the time. For whatever reason, didn't matter what their roster was, they always sort of, had some fun with Vancouver, took it to Vancouver and got some wins. But it's been tough this year. So I think to keep that from getting too long, to prevent the frustration from sitting in and prevent guys from sort of getting away from that solid game they've played the last 3 games overall, the 200-foot game, I think that's why it's real important for them to get a win or at least a point tonight.
Yeah, I was talking to Reem we were setting up before the program and, just talking about what we're going to be discussing. And of course, discuss the, Wheeler being all choked at the end of the game and, showing some of that frustration. And I'm fine with it. I mean, I actually like that. I mean, some of the passion that he brings to the game is great. I'd far rather see the passion, flipping the visor up after a shootout winner or, celebrating when things are going well. But I'll tell you what, I think I'm going to stack that top line in DraftKings tonight because these guys are due. I think they're feeling the pressure, and I don't think there could be anything better for the Winnipeg Jets tonight outside of an all-world performance by their goalie than to get a little bit of production and get some good feelings back amongst Scheifele and Wheeler and Stastny, or if someone else is on that line, whoever else is in that spot. Because at the end of the day, you're going to get production from that Dubois line, especially if they're playing some more advantageous matchups. You're going to get the goaltending. At times the defense is going to be a bit of an issue, but it's impossible to see this team winning consistently if they're not getting production from that top line, especially if they're having some issues fishing the puck out of their own net when they're on the ice.
Yeah, and I think that's the other reason why I don't blame you for loading that up tonight on that line, because I think pride sets in. I think it's like, you have a bad game or you play poorly yourselves and other guys are stepping up or playing well. I think pride steps in. And I think if there's a lot of pride in that Blake Wheeler and frustration, as you saw there. There's some pride in Mark Scheifele as well. And Stastny's just a veteran. Like, Stastny is such a key addition. And I think Stastny's just the guy that, is going to show up and be the difference maker too. But they're also level-headed. But I'm with you. I think they're going to come out tonight and have a point to prove. They, much like we know that they were -9, the three of them on Saturday, that they're well aware of that as well. And probably, knowing Blake Wheeler a little bit from the day's interview, he's probably said something in the room along, hey, we know it was us tonight a little bit, so don't worry. Thanks for having our back, and we'll try to have yours on Monday.
Yeah, there's the DK stack tonight. Jets line 1. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Hey, before we go, I'm going to talk some NFL free agency with Zig in just a minute, but I have to ask you, as the card-carrying member of the Bears Nation,
I got to go.
Were you just so disappointed that you guys didn't get Russell Wilson? What was your reaction? You know me, I'm a big Andy Dalton guy. But it doesn't sound like that was a very popular signing amongst Bears fans, Jim.
Well, Trubisky had better stats than him last year. And we can go to the team and everything else, and that may weigh into it. I am so disappointed they didn't get Russell Wilson, and here's why. I never believed Seattle was shopping him. And when I saw the 6 assets they could have got, the 3 first-round picks, the 2 starters, I would assume are at positions Seattle needs help with. And then, if you're not going to trade him for 6 assets and probably 5 starters, you weren't trading him. So I don't know why they were shopping him. I don't know why they went down this road. I know Russell Wilson has come out publicly and said, I need some help here. I need some pieces. Maybe that's what they were trying to do. I don't know. Andy Dalton, do I like him better than Mitch Trubisky? Yes, I do. But to me, it's, hey, they signed Shane Matthews. Eric Kramer. Cade McCowan. Andy Dalton. It's like, it's the constant Band-Aid. But the one thing I'm happy is like the Khalil Mack trade, they took some shots. Like, it's not like they're not trying. I'd rather have the organization try and miss than just sit there and go, oh, we don't want to give up that much. So, I don't know what they're doing with Allen Robinson. He should have been signed a long time ago because he's their only legitimate offensive threat. David Montgomery might have another good year. He had a good second half. So I'm happy Andy Dalton's there, but I'm happy he's there because it's not Mitch Trubisky. Nick Foles, and if they draft somebody, if you go into this season with Dalton as your starter, Foles backing up, and a drafted quarterback, and then you can get, that quarterback into the second year or his third year and he can pan out, then I'm okay with it. If Andy Dalton goes down in week 3, Nick Foles comes in and does his best to throw for 148 yards, and this rookie gets thrown in too soon, then I have a problem with it. But if it works out, I think Andy Dalton's a good, solid quarterback. I think he's a legitimate starter. I think he's going to win some games. And if they draft well, I'm okay with it. But yeah, I wanted Russell Wilson big time.
The Red Rifle in the Windy City. I can't wait for the NFL and football to get back. Hopefully we'll have some 3-down
right
football.
Before we go, I know I don't have the background you all do, Huss, and I know everybody in these Zoom calls has awards back there. I don't have any awards, but here's my script from the movie Goon. I was in it 10 years ago for 7 seconds. It's on page 153, my role. And then I usually have this up in backgrounds, my autographed Houston Astros 2017. And now that's tainted too.
Yeah, exactly. That's
so between my movie career being over, the Astros tainted championship, and no Russell Wilson, there again in a pandemic are worse things. We're all good.
Hey, you know what? You're a father, Jim. That's what really counts.
Yes, that's all that matters.
Dude, listen, this has been so much fun.
Aquatech.
That's right. Okay, you go get in the tub, crack one open. You're done for the day. Thanks for doing this, pal, and we'll look forward to doing this with you again very soon.
You know, my man, anytime. This is outstanding. I'm happy for you and Remis and look forward to talking to you again. All the best.
Right on. There he is, the big rig himself, kicking off our 1290 reunion week here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. There's Jim Toth. We will have all the guys joining us this week, or many of them. Rick Ralph's coming on tomorrow, Kevin O on Wednesday, Brandon Rewicki on Thursday, which I think will coincide with a new edition of his Skates and Plates podcast, and then finishing it off strong with Troy Westwood on Friday. Can't wait to talk to Westy about his thoughts on all the CFL, potential XFL news, as well as his thoughts on the game. Zig Fracassi coming up in just a second. Do want to thank our wonderful sponsors, Not AutoCorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Why not get into the vehicle of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team? The Tesla leaders in Winnipeg. I think I talked to Trev on the weekend. They have got 17 in stock or coming right now, and they've been doing Teslas for over 7 years. So if you're thinking about going electric, pop over to Not AutoCorp. They'll also help you if you want to get out of a lease or into a new vehicle with an incredibly successful consignment program. Pop down and see Trev and the team at Waverly and McGillivray, or visit them online at not.ca. And it's another game night tonight, a little late. And as I mentioned, I'm a little choked about the public health orders that, we have to leave the bars or restaurants before the game is over. So that makes it a great day for the Boston Pizza game day meal, the spicy pierogi pizza, the Meteor, a 24-pack case of wings. It's all there for you. You can order it online at bostonpizza.com or pop by your local BP in Winnipeg. And thanks again to Andrew, the Enrights, and all the Boston Pizza gang for their support. All right, we've got some puck to talk about. We've got NFL free agency to get to, and a few guys we have enjoyed talking to more over the years than Sirius XM's Zig Fracassi. And Zig joins us now. Zig, what is up? It's great to talk to you again.
Andrew, it's good to be with you, my friend, and also Rick Ralph, too. And I was saddened to hear what happened to you guys in Winnipeg, but the fact that you're now with Winnipeg Sports, I think this is absolutely phenomenal. So good to be with you, my friend.
Well, it's awesome, Zig. And, hey, I mean, this is a rapidly changing industry. And, it really sucked what happened to the station, but I think that we've proven this in spades in a very short time that, any company can close up shop, or they can, make their decisions, and that's to them. But it doesn't change the fact that this is one of, if not the most passionate sports city in Canada, and there's a huge demand for it. And luckily with technology, we've found that, we're able to deliver this content. We've had incredible support from our sponsors, from the listeners, and it's just been a great start. And as we bring you in, sounding like $1 million US tax-free on that setup, we've kind of, the one thing the pandemic has proved this year is that, you have to be able to be flexible as to how you deliver things. And many of us were working from home already. So, doing it yourself isn't such a huge stretch as it might have been 5 or 10 years ago. Did we get Zig muted?
Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. It works better when I'm unmuted.
There you go, Zig.
No, this was so great, I forgot I was going to say. But in all seriousness, yeah, you got a little Shure mixer. You plug the mic in. You run a USB cord through your computer, and it sounds like $1 million, like you said. And I've been doing my weekend shows on NFL radio from home. So the technology is definitely there. You need to adapt. And, you've been able to do that as well. And, the quality's amazingly pretty good. It's amazing with the software that's available anymore. It's really wonderful, because in the past you need to have either an ISDN line or a codec or something of that ilk. But if you got a little simple setup like mine, you're good to go.
Now, Zig, we've always had great NFL chats, and I do want to talk about NFL free agency, but we can't have you on here in the peg being the hockey guy that you are without talking a little NHL. I mean, just first off, it's a strange, weird season with no fans in most buildings. The Canadian teams just playing each other, the divisions looking a little different. But I have to say, from a fan's perspective, I think the intensity of these games, it sort of feels like playoffs every night, at least here in the North Division. How have you enjoyed this strange 56-game odyssey that we're in the middle of right now on the ice?
The way I would liken it, Andrew, is almost like the original 6 times 4 divisions. If you really kind of look at it in that particular sense, because you've got all these teams going at it, and all they are is playing each other each and every night. And, I find the North very freewheeling. I still think Winnipeg may wind up catching Toronto. I think they got the best overall team. In the other divisions, Tampa, boy, they're really missing Kucherov, aren't they? Got like the best record in the league. Vegas looks strong out west, although I think that division's a little shaky. And then, of course, you got the battle royal each and every night, which is the East Division. For goodness sakes, I mean, you could conceivably have one of the recent sort of Stanley Cup finalists or winners, maybe it's Washington, maybe Pittsburgh, Boston, who knows? One of those teams may actually miss out, Andrew, because the competition is just so competitive. So I think you're absolutely right on that. I think that's why maybe we haven't had any seismic trade moves yet either, because these teams still think that they are very, very competitive. And then, of course, you got the quarantine if you were to make trades involving the Canadian teams. So that makes things a little bit harder. But I think overall, I think your point's valid that this has been playoff-style hockey each and every night.
Speaking of that East Division, I mean, looking at the standings right now, Washington and the Islanders are tied at the top with 44 points. You've got Pittsburgh, who had that rough start and then rattled off 6 in a row and immediately got into a comfortable playoff spot at 40. Then the Boston Bruins are 4 points back. Now, what's important to note is that, they've only played 28 games as opposed to Pittsburgh playing 32. But the Bruins have gotten it together after a pretty uninspiring couple of weeks of hockey. And then you've got the Philadelphia Flyers, who are sort of, one night they look like world beaters, and then they can go get pumped 9-0 another night. Jersey, The Rangers, and Buffalo at the bottom of the division. And honestly, when you're forecasting how things are going to go, maybe one of the most important things is to see who's got games with Buffalo and Jersey left on their schedule down the stretch.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I know the Bruins, because of COVID, couldn't play Saturday in Buffalo. They're not able to play the Islanders tomorrow night in Boston. So if they hold on to those, Andrew, they've got 7 games left against Buffalo. I think Pittsburgh's pretty much swept them out already. And, being from Western New York, even though I wasn't a fan of the team, it's kind of depressing to see what's going on there in Buffalo.
Oh, man.
Unfortunately,
so sad.
It's a great hockey town. It really is. And there is a record of them being a playoff team. So it's not like they've been this incompetent franchise for all these years. It's been the last decade. New Jersey, speaking of Buffalo, Lindy Ruff, former Sabres coach, now at the Devils, he's got them guys playing hard. They're a little short on talent. Heischer's been out of the lineup, but they play very hard. Keep an eye on the Rangers, though. Panarin's back in. It seems like that distraction with the extortion, whatever that was, back in Russia, that seems to be on the back burner. If they get a little bit of goaltending down the stretch, the Rangers could make a push as well. But, New Jersey is a tougher route, I think, but Buffalo is just an absolute train wreck at this point.
Yeah, it is sad. And, I mean, you speak, being from Western New York, I mean, the thing that is just, no skin in the game whatsoever in that division or with the Buffalo Sabres. But much like the Bills, when you have such a passionate group of fans that are so devoted to their teams, they deserve better. And it's bizarre. I mean, you'd be a good person to ask on this. The Pagulas have really managed to turn around a pretty morbid franchise in the Bills. And I guess getting Josh Allen was a big part of that. But they've hired the right people. They've made great decisions. And now they're a legitimate contender. Nothing has happened like that with the hockey team.
No, it hasn't. And I think you bring up a very valid point. And it's not like the Pagulas haven't tried. They've spent money. they've brought some people in. They thought maybe Eric Stahl would be a nice add to some of the younger players. Okposo simply hasn't worked out. Jeff Skinner, he's on the fourth line. They've been benching him, and he has one goal, and he's earning $9 million a year, which I thought was an absolutely horrendous contract. Andrew, even before they handed that out, I'm like, he's not Crosby. He's not Ovechkin. What are they doing here? They're paying him on 1 year. But to your point, where they haven't been able to find their Brandon Bean and Sean McDermott on the hockey side. Those two guys are devoted to football, and you always hear the word culture, which I think is way overused, Andrew. But in that particular organization, it's legit. You take a look at some of the guys that the Bills have retained, Feliciano, Matt Milano, some of these other players that they've been able to bring back. They took less money to stay in Buffalo because they love the way that it's set up there. So in other words, the Bills are very, very well run with the same ownership that owns the Sabres, yet that side of the fence is not very well run. So until they find their Bean and McDermott combo, that franchise is in trouble.
Hey, Zig Fracassi with his Zig, before we get to NFL, I want to ask you one question about the West. I think we knew that Vegas was going to be a very good team. Everyone expected Colorado to be a very good team. Now, granted, Minnesota did get massacred in back-to-back games against Colorado, but what a great start to this season in Dean Evason's term as the official head coach, as the Wild have, added Kaprizov and really turned into, at least they seem like a very different team that we've seen going head-to-head with the Jets in the Central Division for the last few years.
Yeah, your point's well taken. Kaprizov may be the most exciting young player in the National Hockey League today. I mean, I'm watching him do that 10-2 skate of his. It's really something to watch out for. And the one thing that I always tweet out when I do my hockey observations is that for the first time ever, Minnesota is a fun team to watch. I thought I needed to have my pulse checked after I tweeted that the first time, but I'm telling you, this team is absolutely fun to watch. They play a lot of transition game. I think that was a design of the GM, who I've been a big fan of, Billy Guerin, for an awful long time. Evanson, like you mentioned, I think has done a really good job. And I think they've changed the dynamic of this team, Andrew, whereas no longer Parise and Suter are the faces of this team anymore. And I thought those contracts, when they were handed out, were god-awful. Two decent enough players. I know they're from the Twin Cities, and it was a feel-good story, but the fact of the matter is they haven't done anything of substance with those two in there. Their contracts are albatross, but I guess they've been able to find a use for them. But make no mistake, they're no longer the faces of the franchise. Kaprizov and some of the youngsters are. Joel Eriksson-Ek is another young player that I really like a lot. Dumba and Brodin on that blue line, they're absolutely terrific. So Billy Guerin has done something that I thought would never be possible, is to make the Minnesota Wild a fun team and successful team to watch, although I think Colorado still has 110 shots over the last two games or whatever.
Yeah, listen, the last two games for Minnesota, probably not the two-game sample you really want to show for what this team is so far this year, but the Avalanche are a wagon, and they can certainly make you pay. Zig's with us. Let's get to some football talk. Zig, who are the teams right now when you're on NFL Sirius XM NFL radio over the course of the past week? What have been the teams that have been dominating the free agency conversations that you've been involved in?
Well, before I answer that, Andrew, I was just on after your previous guy, Jim, there, and I felt bad for him with the Chicago Bears. But I would, if I would have been on with Jim, I'll say this: Jim, Bears haven't had a quarterback since Sid Luckman, so relax. So, all right, now that I said that, although I mean, Billy Wade was the quarterback when they won in '63, Jim McMahon in '86, and yeah, there was a little degree of success with Cutler and some of these other guys, but the fact of the matter is this is a franchise, Andrew, that hasn't been able to replace the quarterback, and they've been one of those teams discussed. Obviously, they restructured a bunch of salaries to free up $20 million, although letting Fuller go, I thought was a big move by them, and Denver scoops him up because of the connection with Vic Fangio out there, the former defensive coordinator.
Hey, Zig, just on that, the Fuller signing, I'll be honest. I mean, the Vikes are throwing $10 million at Patrick Peterson, and then the next day, Fuller gets put on the market. Was that at all related? Once the Vikings had spent their money, did they let him go then? And was that just simply a tough cap decision they had to make? Because I think Fuller can still play.
Oh, yeah. Fuller's still a hell of a player, and they were going to let him go anyway, Andrew, but I think it was because of a procedural move. It ultimately had to get onto the NFL transaction page. It's like the official sort of, I guess you'd call it, registry. So I thought the Broncos swooped in and did very, very well. Peterson, that one's going to be interesting. I started to see a little bit of signs of slippage in his play last year, although Mike Zimmer, the head coach there, and Rick Spielman obviously think that he's got a little bit of gas left in the tank. So that was an interesting move. The Tomlinson move I thought was pretty good for them. Some of the other teams, New England, obviously, would they spend over $300 million in
Where did that come from? That's not really in the Bill Belichick playbook. Is it just basically an admission that, okay, what we were trying to do last year just did not work, and now we're going to change it up?
Well, think about this. If they had spent some money when Tom was still there, he might still be playing for the New England Patriots. The bottom line was Brady got out of Dodge there because he saw, what was the old Michael Ray Richardson line? The ship be sinking. Well, he saw the ship be sinking with the New England Patriots, and he was done too much carrying this team on his shoulders. So, at some point, Andrew, these teams have the room to spend money, but at some point you have to spend it. So hence New England got two of the best tight ends on the market there in Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. You bring in Bourne and a couple of other receivers. Obviously you've made some other additions as well. And then you've got Hightower coming back off of the, sitting out last year. You're bringing Cam Newton back, which a lot of people are surprised. I wasn't, because Belichick fawned over him, raved about him. And I think that was the idea. If you get Cam some weapons, he might still be an effective quarterback. So New England's been talked about, obviously. Houston, I think, has signed every lower to mid-level free agent you could think of to mankind. And by the way, another few lawsuits against Deshaun Watson here, hindering his trade value. So those are some of the teams, obviously, that have been talked about on NFL radio. Of course, we talk about them all. Russell Wilson, will he ultimately get dealt? I don't see that at this particular point, although I don't think there's any question. There's a little bit of a sort of a distance, a little rift, maybe not pronounced, but a rift nonetheless between Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. So maybe at some point Russell Wilson does become an ex-Seattle Seahawk.
Zig Fracassi with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Zig, you mentioned Deshaun Watson, and it's such a horrible story in that, I think you'd be hard pressed outside of, maybe Pat Mahomes and a couple other players to have a more well-liked, respected, marketable superstar in the league than Deshaun Watson. And when I first heard, what was being alleged and found out where it was from, the lawyer has a bit of a checkered reputation, shall we say, and none of it was criminal, it was civil. But I mean, day after day, week after week, Zig, there's more and more allegations. This is a serious problem for Deshaun Watson, personally, for his professional career, never mind what it's doing to the Houston Texans situation as to whether or not they punt on their franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and, it's one of these things, Andrew. I won't speculate because none of us really know what's gone on here. So I can't offer any pronounced insights to that. I have said I thought maybe the timing of this was a little bit suspicious in the sense that Watson asked out, and all of a sudden you start hearing about these lawsuits coming up, civil suits, although I think there are one or two that do allege sexual assault too. So, and again, I think the agent probably said it best too. He says women who suffer this deserve to be heard, but also those who allege and are not proven right, they ought to be prosecuted as well. So only that's going to handle over time. But you're talking about a young man who's done a ton for charity in the Houston area. He also has kind of picked up the baton of Warwick Dunn. You remember him, the outstanding running back from the Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons, and he was buying single family homes for single parents. And one of the people that he bought for was Deshaun Watson's family. So Deshaun now has started to pick up that sort of baton and move on with it. And again, if the young man did all of this, this is a real problem. Never mind the football and the trade value, it's a problem. But if he didn't, let's pursue the media zeal in freeing him, if you will. But until all that's resolved, I don't see him going anywhere. Or Andrew, if I'm a GM, I don't touch Deshaun Watson at this particular point with a 10-foot pole, because you don't know what's going to happen out of the resolution of this matter.
No, absolutely. And Zig, just for a moment, we'll take out everything that's happening right now with Deshaun Watson, but just looking back at the last couple of seasons, I mean, we're 14 months removed from them being up 24-0 in a playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes.
And it's just stunning to see how that franchise at literally every level has absolutely disintegrated into, a full-blown tire fire right now before all of this stuff happened.
24-0, had a chance to put the game away, but then O'Brien got cute with the play call. There was the fake punt. There was this and that, and then all of a sudden it became an avalanche. Kansas City started to look like Kansas City, so that's how proficient they were. But you could tell that there was signs of discord. He may be a great man. He's got a special needs son, and I respect the heck out of that, but I don't think much of Bill O'Brien as a coach. I don't think much of him as a GM. So you start looking at the moves that they made. They trade DeAndre Hopkins, arguably a top 3 receiver in the NFL. You trade him basically for a bag of peanuts and a guy who hasn't played a whole lot.
What does that do to the guys in the room? I mean, I remember being so stunned. Wait a second. They just traded DeAndre Hopkins, and they're bringing back David Johnson's contract? It didn't make sense to me. I can only imagine how that went over amongst Texans players.
Outstanding point. And maybe it didn't, because I think there became a friction after that. Then, you had the Amy Palchich, the outstanding public relations person. She wound up being let go, some issues with culture. So all of a sudden now you're starting to think, all right, there may be something more systemic going on with the Houston Texans. Let's not forget trading for Laramie Tunzel, who I think is an average left tackle at best. You gave up those 2 number 1 picks to get him. You wouldn't think Houston would like to have the 3rd overall pick of the draft right now. That's with the Miami Dolphins. So all these moves, and then Deshaun, by the way, signed that multi-year contract even after all this happened. So you thought he would be around as part of the rebuild. Then they start terribly last year. J.J. Watt, you can tell he's getting frustrated. Again, the culture issues were permeating. I don't know what to think of Cal McNair. You wonder if the late, great Robert McNair, if he was still around, if all this stuff would be going on. So you add all of this here, Andrew, and then boom, before you know it, we're talking about J.J. Watt now with the Arizona Cardinals. You've got the trade, Lawson for Bernardrick McKinney, who's been one of the staple points of the Houston defense. You bring in a coach, and I like David Culley, but he's never been a coordinator in this league. So this poor guy, maybe he's like, he has to answer Deshaun Watson questions. He doesn't know how to answer. He says, there is our quarterback for now. There's been this undercurrent about how much power this Jack Easterby guy, who was with the Patriots, who was a team chaplain, if he's kind of poisoning the room. They bring Casario in, who's got a good reputation as a Patriots personnel man. Deshaun gets pissed off about that because he wanted some input on the coach and the GM. I guess that was he was promised. They didn't do that. Andrew, we could go on another 2 or 3 hours about this organization, but I'm telling you, those are the bullet points as to why, like you talked about, this team was maybe a quarter, 2 quarters, maybe 2 quarters and a half away from getting to a conference championship game, which they've never been to. And now we're looking at them as train wreck USA. So, and this has all happened within a short period of time. This hasn't been 4 or 5 years. It's probably been 18 months, 22 months, something of that effect.
No, it really is a stunning turnaround and just an absolute mess. Far from it in Kansas City. They're back-to-back AFC champs, but, really did get, exposed in the Super Bowl on the line of scrimmage on both sides of it from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They spent some pretty big money getting Joe Thuney out of New England, and Kyle Long comes back and signs a deal out of retirement. It seems like the Chiefs have done a great job at, centering the middle of their offensive line. What about the tackle position with Fisher and Schwartz on the way out? Where does Andy Reid and Brett Veach go from here?
Well, that's a great question. And, hopefully Fisher will be able to play football again, because that was a significant injury that he suffered, in the playoffs. And I think in the Super Bowl, we found out that he was a pretty darn good tackle, because Mike Remmers couldn't shadow Shaq Barrett, you, me, or anybody else in that game. So, and Mitchell Schwartz, I'm a little biased because I know his brother very well, Jeff, who I've done shows with on NFL radio, and I asked him, like, how's Mitch doing? He says, all right. I says, what's he going to do? He says, well, once he have the surgery, he'll find out if he still wants to play or whatever. So if Mitchell wants to play, fine. If not, then I think he goes on to a cooking career, because the guy's super talented.
Hell of a
in
chef.
Culinary. he really is. If they get the Canadian kid back, Duvernay Tardif, I think that helps. So they've got some issues there. Hopefully Mahomes is going to be good to go for the start of the season. Remember, he got hurt in that game against Cleveland. You could tell he was clearly hampered throughout the rest of the postseason.
Well, the funny thing is, when you talk about Mahomes, Zig, is that, I think of the way he played in the Super Bowl, running for his life for the full 60 minutes. He made some of the most incredible plays I've ever seen, and the biggest crime of that entire game was, Tyreek Hill and Darrell Williams letting those beautiful passes, hitting them in their face mask in the end zone, and how it might have been different. I will say this, though. Mahomes, Tampa was just better top to bottom at every area, except probably quarterback. This is the beauty of Tom Brady. He puts himself into situations where, he doesn't need to be Pat Mahomes to win. I joke to friends that if you swap the quarterbacks in that game, Tampa wins 70-0. But in reality, Brady, credit where credit is due. He came there, and it's everything else that he brings to that organization that I think, made, star players far more selfless. It seemed like everybody bought in to exactly what they needed to do. And that's not always easy to do in the National Football League, but it turned that club into a championship squad.
Well, and I think that's why they've sort of reunited the band once again. Gronk's coming back. They re-up with Shaq Barrett. They've taken care of Levante David, the outstanding linebacker. I know they're trying to bring Fournette back, although he could wind up getting some greener pastures elsewhere. And back to Kansas City, though, Andrew, again, this is going to be an off season too. And we cannot forget what happened 3 days before the Super Bowl, and that accident involving the former assistant coach, Britt Reed, Andy's son, and that young girl who unfortunately wound up being hospitalized. Apparently, she's going to have to deal with some of those conditions going forward. At some point, they're going to have to resolve this somehow. I don't know if the Chiefs get involved, whatever the case may be, but let's not forget that 5-year-old girl, too. And, you had to think, too, they would say publicly that didn't affect them. But, my gosh, less than 72 hours before the Super Bowl, thoughts, first of all, to the family and to everyone involved. But then, obviously, the Chiefs, you had to think that was a factor in the locker room. So I want to make sure that got mentioned.
Yeah, no doubt. Zig Fracassi's with us from Sirius XM, NFL, and NHL Radio. Zig, it has been just an absolute pleasure having you on the program. And I will say, without a doubt, the best sounding guest we have had. Just an absolutely perfect setup coming in here. We really appreciate it. We'll have to do this again soon, maybe going towards the NFL draft coming up next month.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime, Andrew. Again, good to be chatting with you and get that reuniting tour. Rick, always good to be on with him as well. And Remis, even though you're not off the hook yet, Remis, you owe me a Jets t-shirt, so get that out. So.
We're going to do it. Hey, Zig, all the best. Yeah, stay up late tonight. Canucks and Jets going on
I will.
10 o'clock tonight. look for our top line needs to pop a couple tonight. They were quite frustrated after the game at Edmonton, so we'll see what happens. Zig, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
Andrew, again, good luck to you and Remis, and glad to see you're back on the airwaves there in Winnipeg, because you're a true credit to what you do there. You got the passion, the energy, and people in Winnipeg are lucky to have you.
Right back at you, Zig. Thanks for doing this. Give him a follow on Twitter, folks, if you haven't already. That is the one and only Zig Fracassi. Joined us for years talking hockey, talking football, and it was fun to get to both of those topics with Zig today. Excuse me. On Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Mentioned, Rick is going to be back tomorrow. If you're just popping in, we had Jim Toth to begin the program today, and it's going to be a bit of a 1290 reunion this week here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Tomorrow, Murat Atesh and Rick Ralph. Of course, we'll break down all things Jets with Murat, and we'll have some fun with Rick talking Jets and a whole bunch of other topics. Kevin Olszewski on Wednesday, Brandon Rowicki on Thursday, and Troy Westwood on Friday. And we'll have Bombing and Munns, Paulie Edmonds as well, hopefully in the next couple weeks or so. But it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. And Remis, as we have seen so far today in the chat, people were really fired up to hear from Jim. Had a great turnout early in the program, and it's really been solid throughout the afternoon. And I imagine this is a bit of a sign of things to come this week, as so many of the favorite voices of 1290 going to be jumping on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily this week.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot. Mondays seem to be a popular day. People want to recap the weekend, but of course, I think Jim's bringing in a lot of listeners. Wasn't in the hot tub, didn't show off his beautiful head of hair, so maybe in the future when he comes on, we can certainly do that. But a lot of great talk in the chat. I think people are excited to see some familiar voices. And speaking of familiar voices, Zig Fracassi coming on, a longtime guest with us. And by far and away the best microphone setup I've ever seen.
Oh, did he sound good?
I'm going to message him. And he did ask me for a Jets t-shirt after, so I'll see if I can send him something. I have sent him a Bombers t-shirt in the past. So
you know what? Leave that. Get his size. I'll pop down. Where else would we get our Jet stuff? From our friends at Royal Sports. We'll get that done, and we'll get something over to Zig, because we want him to be a regular here on this program. All right, before we wrap up, let's get to our Cool Bet lines of the day. And wow, busy night tonight in the National Hockey League. You got 9 games tonight, and a few out late. If you want to do one of those late game parlays, you got Avalanche Coyotes, Blues Golden Knights, Kings and Sharks, and of course the Winnipeg Jets and the Vancouver Canucks. And I think the books are expecting what a lot of Winnipeg Jet fans are expecting, a much better Jets club tonight against a team they have had quite a bit of success against in the Vancouver Canucks. Jets minus 118 favorite. Vancouver even money right now, Reem. And as we talked before, the Jets, I think, will be, I think they'll play, I don't want to say a desperate club, but I think there'll be a real sense of urgency in their game, especially focusing on that top line. We saw the frustration of Blake Wheeler at the end of the game. We heard it from the coach and players afterwards. No panic right now, but definitely a big game to not only bank 2 points in a very, very tight division, but also avoid losing 3 in a row in regulation for the first time this season.
Yeah, I think Jim said it well, too. I mean, you look at the last 2 games, I thought they were close games. They were even. They were winnable. The difference ended up being Connor McDavid. And look, you'd like to see the top line get going. I don't know how long you can continue, especially keeping them together. Maybe they'll mix them up. We did have the line rushes from today. Mike McIntyre tweeted them out. I put them in the chat. Forward line staying the same. Defense pairing, there was a change. Morrissey playing with... was it? Oh, geez. Sorry, I had it.
Morrissey's back with Pullman. Morrissey's back with Pullman. Forbert is with Pionk, and Stanley is with DeMello. So essentially, that swap of Pullman and DeMello has happened. What can you say? That pairing just did not click the last couple nights. So you knew Paul Maurice was going to switch something. Although I think a lot of people, as we spoke, with Jim a little earlier, thought that the change might actually come with a little bit of a reconfiguration up potentially in the top 6 or top 9. But it's on the blue line is what we'll see apparently when the puck drops tonight in Vancouver.
Yeah, I mean, let's see the top line, or what has labeled when you order it.
Traditionally, the
Stastny,
top
Schaefer,
line.
Wheeler. Traditionally, but I think we can all agree the line that is actually playing the best is the Connor Dubois Ehlers. Ehlers is playing fantastic, skating, carrying the puck, shooting. Kyle Connor scoring goals, and Dubois doing it at both ends of the ice. And I think he's finding his game as well. You see how big he is, how fast he can move, and he's really shining. I think the last couple of games playing with those three. So I'm kind of curious what that's going to be. Copp, Lowry, Appleton, they kind of were a bit of a cold streak. They did, put a couple on the back of the net recently. And I agree with you. I think Matthew Perreault has been excellent on the fourth line in limited ice time. So this is a big game. Got to come back for the Jets. Vancouver playing very well, but I'm not too surprised that they're having a bit of a down year from maybe the expectations were at the end of last year.
Yeah, exactly. So here's your decimal odds for those of you that like them that way from coolbet.com. Jets 1.85 tonight, and the Canucks at 2.00. Two other games in the North Division as well. Edmonton, road underdog in Montreal to take on the Canadiens. Edmonton's paying 2.05. Montreal is at 1.80. And the Calgary Flames go into Ottawa to take on the Senators. 1.56 pays for the Flames, and the Sens a juicy 2.50 at home. Oh well, who knows? Maybe a big home dog tonight for the Ottawa Senators. We'll take a look at that. One other really interesting game, a very important game in that East Division, as we talked about with Zig, is the New York Islanders taking on the Philadelphia Flyers. Islanders paying 1.80 and Philly paying 2.05. Reem, great show today and a great start to a little 1290 reunion week. Really looking forward to having Rick on the program tomorrow. And we'll kick it off with Marat at 1:15, sort of our first guest tomorrow, recapping tonight's game. And I imagine what happens tonight will certainly dictate the mood around the Winnipeg Jet fan base and this program tomorrow as to whether the Jets get it back on track, get a big win to kick off an important week on the road, or we're talking about trying to salvage a split against the Canucks after a third consecutive loss. I'm optimistic about this game tonight, and as I said before, I really do think we will see a big push. I would be stunned if we weren't talking about Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler and Paul Stastny in a very positive light after tonight. I think they will play with some urgency, some real desperation, and they're due to have the red light going on in the right end tonight.
Yeah, Blake Wheeler threw the puck into the stands after last game, throwing away all of his frustrations, clearing himself of all the toxins of their poor play. That's what it symbolized. I think he's going to be ready to go. I think, look, these guys haven't played well for a while. You know they can bring it. You know they're frustrated. I can't see them losing 3 in a row here, so I would lean towards the Jets. I'm monitoring the chat during your conversation with Zig. Very flowing Jets chat. A lot of people unhappy, though. A lot of people want to fire whoever they can. We'll wait and see.
Who would that be? It's funny. Rod Paterson this morning did an opening before he had Sean and Ken on, and said that, he was hearing from people from Winnipeg all weekend that, want to fire Paul Maurice. And I mean, listen, I think there's a lot of pressure on Maurice right now to get the most out of this hockey club. And some will say that it's more a personnel thing on the blue line. I think, for the most part, the forward, the goaltending pretty much set. But as I said, they've lost 2 games in a row for the first time. Probably pump the brakes a little bit on that. But there are some people with more big picture reasons why they think that, maybe the Jets would be better off with another head coach. That's not going to be a real legitimate conversation unless things really go south for the Winnipeg Jets right now. And they certainly have an opportunity to quell those fires tonight if they can beat the Vancouver Canucks. I do want to give a shout out to a bunch of the people that have been in the chat: the Wrench Doozer, the Bullet, Mike K, Chris Ireland, Vern Fechtel, Eric Music, our girl Taylor Ewell. Hi, Taylor. Great to have you with us. We miss you every day. Parallax Prophecy, Mike Krzyzewski is in there, Jeff Kabilas, K Rocket. Anyways, it's been awesome, and I know you've been able to pay a bit more attention while we do the show, Remis, when I'm doing a few of these interviews. But it's just been amazing. A great turnout today. We've been pushing 300 live viewers pretty much the entire program. A great way to start the week. And a great way to do it, again, with all of our old pals from 1290, kicking it off with Jim Toth today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the week. It should be fun. And yes, thank you everyone in chat. I do have fun monitoring the chat while you're doing, you're chatting with Jim and chatting with Zig and whoever else. You got to have it monitored. Shout out to everyone in there. Thank you so much. Yes, we're had 300. Peaked at around just over 300. Been a lot of people in here. I know many, many more listen on podcasts and watch it on YouTube replay. So this is incredible. Thank you guys for all the support. We see you all in chat. It's been a lot of fun discussing the Jets, and we are looking forward to tonight's game and a lot of late starts, which I actually prefer, Huss. It's better for my schedule, the late starts.
Yeah, well, you're going to enjoy the next 2 weeks because the Jets don't have a 6:30 game until the 31st of March. So, maybe some afternoon naps for some of you that don't normally stay up that late. Figure it out because that's the way it is right now for the next 2 weeks. 9 o'clock and 9:30 p.m. starts. Again, folks, if you're in the YouTube chat, hit us with the like, throw a comment in. That always helps. If you're listening on the podcast, rate and review, drop a 5-star in there for your boys and maybe a little comment. And as always, if you have the opportunity, support our sponsors. They are the ones that are enabling us to bring this content to you every day. Boston Pizza Winnipeg, Not AutoCorp, the Nick and Nikki DQ Group, which is Northgate, Polo Park, the Niverville, and St. Anne's Dairy Queens, and of course, the OGs, Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, 650 Raleigh and EK. I'll be popping by Royal to get our t-shirt, our Jets t-shirt for Zig. They are always the number one spot in the city when it comes to any sort of licensed merch, and while I'm in there, maybe get ready to do a little more active things outside than we're into spring. Remo, what's the call tonight? Jets win?
I've been saying Jets the last 2 games, and it didn't go that way. Actually, I don't know if I said Jets Thursday. That's right. I think I definitely said Jets Saturday. I did have Hellebuck and Ehlers in fantasy that night. I'm rolling Jets again. I don't think they'll lose 3 in a row. It might be a homer pick, but I think they've played well. I know Vancouver doesn't have Connor McDavid, so I think that's going to help.
Now, I haven't checked it, but if there is a showdown offering for DraftKings, we'll have to do one of those tonight, and I will tip my hand. Is there one, do you know?
No, it's like the San Jose game. It's not.
That's too bad. All right, well, whatever. That's just going to allow me to stack the Scheifele line looking for their breakout game against people playing all the other games. But if you haven't already, hit us up on Twitter. If you are a DraftKings player and you're not getting our invites, at Remis, at Hustlerama, we'll make sure you get in and get the invites as we keep going with our DraftKings contest. Great show today. We got to get out so we can get this sucker loaded up for everybody listening on the podcast. Remis, great job as always today. It was a heck of a lot of fun and a great way to start the Monday.
Yeah, this was an awesome show. Mondays are always very fun. You get to recap the weekend, but a busy Jets week. I am excited, and we do have a lot of great guests. So thank you, everyone who's in chat, who's liked the video, and followed us on any of the other social medias, because we're on every single one. So Sports Talk WPG.
Yeah, keep an eye out. We're going to have some social media contests as well as sort of boost the followers and reward some of the incredible support we're getting with you. So, at Sports Talk WPG on all of your favorite social media sites. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to everyone. Enjoy this hockey game tonight. We'll break it down fully tomorrow at 1 o'clock live on YouTube. We'll kick it off with Murat Atesh of The Athletic, and then a little afternoon ride reunion. Rick Ralph joins me tomorrow at around 1:45. Really looking forward to that, as well as having the rest of the boys on from the Big Show and Kevin O, all this week on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. So, folks, enjoy the game tonight. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting Winnipeg Sports Talk and Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.